Are you stuck staring at your W-2? Are tax refund worries holding you back? You probably have FOMO, the fear of messing up. The fix? Using TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. They find every credit and deduction to help you get every refund dollar you deserve. Or your money back. It's time to overcome your fear of messing up and get your taxes done right. Start filing today in the Credit Karma app.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi!
Okay, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
And I am Jake Novak in for Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show here for the next 2 hours with you across the country, across the world. And I got a jam-packed show for you. I mean, I know Roger's out, and I appreciate having the opportunity to fill in for him during the week and now on the weekend on this day. But wow, a lot of news to get to. So it isn't about B-team stuff today. You've got to really listen. Going to take your calls, by the way, a couple times during the show. I'm going to give you that number a couple times. And here's the number, 800-848-9222. Call me about any of the major stories that you're interested in. But I'm going to start off with this No Kings rally. Because this No Kings rally, first of all, I want to give, I don't know, should I say props, recognition to the folks who organized it. And we know who organized it. A lot of George Soros money, a lot of money from that American billionaire who's now living in China as an avowed communist in philosophy only. He hasn't given away all of his money as far as I know. They got millions of people across the country to come out to these No Kings rallies. Absolutely impressive considering it was a little colder than usual in the Northeast. There's other things to do. We've got baseball season going, the Final Four, the Sweet 16 games this weekend, all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that was abundantly clear during these protests is that the issues were very, very murky. What were they protesting exactly? Were they protesting that Donald Trump is a king? Well, he's not a king. As has been pointed out by many people, a king wouldn't allow those kinds of nationwide protests without arrests and things like that. Were they protesting the Iran war? Well, some of them seemed to be. Were they protesting the state of the economy? Some of them. It was a laundry list kind of thing. And if you go on social media right now, you will have no problem finding a plethora of right-wing, conservative, some very, very smart people of all ages posting videos and posting comments, just ripping apart these protesters. Ripping them completely apart, showing that they really didn't know what they were talking about. They were confused. Some of them were out and out anti-American. The ones who weren't confused seemed to be the ones who were in favor of terrorism, Iran, Palestinian terrorists, the whole thing. And it's entertaining, I guess, to go on social media and see that, because what they're doing is they're attacking them on the facts. They're going after them on the facts. Oh, you didn't really know what you were protesting about. Here's a sign that you have that says that your dog is smarter than Trump, but you spell it T-H-E-N. You know, it's supposed to be T-H-A-N when you're making a comparison. Smarter than Trump. I mean, all these little owns. They call it owning them. I own those liberals. I own those No Kings rioters. Yeah, I mean, you did. Yeah, on the facts. But one of the biggest mistakes you can make about politics in America, and this is also true about dating, is to believe that it's based on the facts. Politics, especially when you're not having a personality-driven presidential election year, that's what we're not in that kind of year right now. We're in a midterm election year, is very, very emotional. You're not going to convert any of these people. You're not going to make them feel ashamed by showing how wrong they are on the facts or how misinformed they are, or proving to the world that they're really only interested in terrorism and the destruction of this country. You're not going to do any of that. You're not going to succeed. And it's not just because, you can write it off as saying, well, they're brainwashed. These people are going to these rallies. It was a bunch of old baby boomers bringing their grandchildren. It's not just because of that. It's because they're there because of emotions. People who think that they vote because of a laundry list of issues or a laundry list of qualifications or lack thereof, no matter how smart or educated they are not very educated on the nature of human beings. I don't care how well educated you are, the likelihood is that you will choose who you vote for the same way that you choose whom to date or to marry. It's an emotional decision that is usually made within a couple of minutes of you being exposed to that choice. That's how humans operate. The reasons a lot of anthropologists have figured this out, it has a lot to do with how we survived in the wild in the days of the caveman days. Those cavemen and women who had a little bit of an over-emotional reaction to that saber-toothed tiger 100 yards away were the ones who survived, and so did their children, and it got imprinted in their DNA. Those cavemen said, maybe I shouldn't jump from this cliff, are the ones who lived. And sometimes those emotions were very much in line with the facts of physics or the jungle, and sometimes they weren't. Sometimes they were overly cautious about a bunch of things. They were very connected to their fears, to their hatreds, to even love. Emotions help keep people alive a lot of the time. Not always. I urge you to read a book by somebody who was all the rage 30 years ago, maybe even a little bit less than that. A guy named Gavin de Becker wrote a book called The Gift of Fear. And he's a brilliant guy when it comes to the theories of how we can stay alive in modern situations that are dangerous. So a big part of the book was if you're walking down the street and you see somebody across the street in a hoodie, doesn't matter what the color of their skin are, and you're not so sure, and you get a little tingling in your head about it or in your heart, go ahead and run like the Dickens to the other side of the street, even further away. That will keep you alive. I just summarized that book pretty much. There was a lot of other parts of it. And people like Oprah brought him on. They love this guy. Oh, the gift of fear, emotion can save you. Our emotion is in our DNA. Now, of course, you say that in public. If you're afraid of someone who looks like they're dressed a little scary and you're nervous, run away. Don't worry about insulting them. Now, the same Oprah would probably call him a racist or a hater or someone who's judging books by their cover. 30 years ago, she was applauding the guy. Turns out Gavin de Becker was a better book writer than an actual security chief. Who he was in charge of the security of Jeff Bezos around the time that those nude pictures of him got floated everywhere. And Gavin, that's what happens when you hire a really great book author to be your actual security chief. You can tell your security chief who has experience doing this really well to read that book, but you don't want to hire the author. Just a hot tip from me. I wrote about that extensively when that happened. But the point is, we use emotions. And these people who came to the No Kings rally weren't really locked into facts. And I'm not really saying that to denigrate them necessarily. Because you go out and protest on a cold day in America when you could be doing so many other things on your Saturday. Of course emotions are involved. Of course they are. And there's something to be said for expressing emotions in a relatively peaceful way. A couple of the No Kings rallies, I think one in Portland, some of them got a little, some parts of them got a little violent, so it wasn't completely nonviolent. But for the most part, with that many people out on the streets, it was a nonviolent event for the most part. So, there is something to be said for doing that. But no, it wasn't really based in fact. So if you go up to these people now, or if you post something online to show them that, no, Donald Trump is not a king. And as I've said many times, look, love or hate Donald Trump. Can we all agree on something? And you should say this to your liberal friends and people who hate Donald Trump. Donald Trump, and I'm not saying this because he wants to be this person. Donald Trump is the most accountable president in the history of this country. What do I mean by that? Does he want to be the most accountable president? I don't think so. I don't think anyone wants to be more accountable than anyone else. We all want to be judged and have the same accountability. But everyone watches every move he makes. Plus, he doesn't really have too many secret moves out there. He tells us what he's thinking so very often. And whatever he does do, whether it's official or unofficial, is scrutinized to the hilt in a way that no president has had to endure ever. And I don't think that that's the worst thing in the world. I think it's the worst thing in the world when he's completely treated unfairly to the detriment of this country. If you're going to be rough on Donald Trump and it doesn't really hurt the country, whatever, go, have at it. That's something for you in your own conscience to deal with. But, I mean, come on, folks. Everything he does is scrutinized more than any other president in the history of this country by far. That is an objective fact. And he probably does a lot to deserve it. And I'm not even saying that on a value basis. He puts himself out there. He puts himself out there to be scrutinized. He's the opposite of a king. I've been in the news business for 33 years. And up until Donald Trump, one of the things I heard in every newsroom I worked in was, boy, all these presidents, they have these prepared statements. They have their makeup and their suits, and everything is just so packaged. Boy, just once I'd like to hear the president tell us what he really thinks. Well, you got him. You got him in spades with Donald Trump. My goodness. And now they don't like it? Anyone who doesn't like that really wasn't a journalist, I think, in my mind. They were really just a cheerleader. Folks, you have the most accountable president in the history of this country, it's not even close. It's not even close. And that's the furthest away from being a king. Kings aren't accountable. Really, the idea of the king, at least in the Western tradition, is the king is really only accountable to God. Then, of course, you had Magna Carta, where they were somewhat accountable to the other parts of the aristocracy. You get where I'm going. But again, folks, this is emotion. This is not based on fact. So if you say this to these folks, you're wasting your time. What you need to figure out is two things. What their emotions are. Is it rage? Is it fear? It's usually one of those two things that people are getting out on the streets. Sadly, people don't really go out on the streets in big numbers for love, for celebration, with the exception of, like, you know, you've seen those films of the end of World War II, and people just crammed into Times Square more than they do even on New Year's Eve, and everyone was kissing each other. That's rare. Most of the time, if people are getting out on the streets, it's either because of fear or hatred or both. And we need to figure out which one, you know, this person is, these people that you're engaging with is dealing with. And then we need to fight emotion with emotion, not necessarily with facts. I love doing news programs and radio analysis programs where we go into the facts and analysis. That's what I love to do. But if faced with someone who's clearly emotionally engaged, much more than they are factually engaged, then we have to speak to them on the level of emotion. And I don't think that being emotionally engaged is necessarily an indictment. Sometimes it's not warranted, and the facts aren't necessarily going to fix that. You know, people who are clinically depressed, have you learned that it isn't necessarily about telling them, hey, what are you so sad about? That's not going to stop a depressed person from being depressed if they are clinically depressed. I'm talking about needing medication kind of depressed. It's a chemical thing. And all the facts in the world aren't going to change someone who is clinically depressed. We need to talk to these types of people, or at least realize that these people are similar to that. They're dealing with an emotional state right now. And that means two things. Either we respond with also emotional material as well, emotional content, or we write it off and we say these people are emotionally very much charged. There's no changing their minds about a number of things, and we're not going to get anywhere. All right. I'm Jake Novak in for Roger Stone here on The Roger Stone Show. Going to be taking calls in a few minutes. The number is 800-848-9222. When we come back, though, I'm going to talk about how we should fight emotion with emotion and why in this midterm election year, if you're interested in fighting for the country. We'll be right back.